Hello! This is a 19th century vampire hunting kit that was acquired by the Royal Armouries for £7,500 in 2012. This is a late 19th century, early 20th century vampire killing kit that was auctioned off through Sotheby's for $25,000 in 2011. This is a late 19th century vampire slaying kit sold by Hanson's auctioneers for almost £16,900 in 2022. That same year, this vampire killing kit went for almost $4,000 when it was sold through Rock Island Auction. Except all of these are almost certainly fake. Or are they? Yeah, they kind of are. Or are they? My name is Shasha, not Sasha, and today I'm gonna try to untangle the mystery of vampire killing kits. Because it was my birthday a couple days ago, we are drinking alcohol-free spritz. My ultimate goal in life is just to become an alcohol-free alcohol influencer, if that makes sense. Cheers! The 1985 horror comedy Fright Night features evil bisexual-ish.
Have you seen the new guy next door yet?
No, but I did hear he's got a live-in carpenter.
Vampires who wear sweatshirts to the club and turn into green goo when killed. It also features a vampire killing kit. In fact, the movie is most often cited as such kit's first media appearance. Because it is. Well, it is with an asterisk. First, we need to define what a vampire killing kit actually is, in the context of this video at least. Because, well, otherwise any old shit in a bag can be considered a kit. The 1973 extravaganza Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter features a weed-smoking, hot girlfriend-having British vampire hunter who moonlights as a disability advocate.
What work?
Oh, didn't I mention it? We're vampire hunters, professional vampire hunters.
It also features a bunch of stuff he and his assistant have in their travel carriage, like wooden stakes and vamp-repelling plants. Does that count as a vampire killing kit? Probably not. I mean, like, it's not even in a bag or anything. But the 1972 TV movie The Night Stalker features not only surprisingly poignant commentary on society's real bloodsuckers, but also this guy. Hey guy! And he's got a bag full of anti-vampire shit. Could that be considered a kit? See, that's more of a gray zone. So when I talk about vampire killing kits, I mean these, mostly wooden, rectangle or rectangle-ish cases that include an array of bloodsucker-slaying instruments such as crosses and crucifixes, a gun with silver bullets, a wooden stake or two, and an accompanying mallet. Maybe even some holy water if you're friends with your dealer. And they're all packed up really neatly inside of that little case. So basically, I'm taking the Potter Stewart pornography approach. I know it when I see it. This is a kid. This is not. Yeah, so basically I said all of that to say that Fright Night is the first, that we know of, movie that featured a vampire killing kit. But even the most cursory search through the Internet Archive returns multiple mentions of such kits pre-1985. Half a decade before the movie was released, there was this guy called Dr. Leonard Wolf, father of 5G conspiracy theorist and occasional feminist Naomi Wolf, by the way. And that guy was talking about vampires in media and showing off his vampire hunter kit at American universities. He also taught a whole course on vampires at San Francisco State University in the 1970s, and once put out a public call for vampires and ended up interviewing a bunch of people with very sophisticated kinks. What a life! But back to the topic. All the kits I discussed up to this point were assembled as props or part of exploration of various forms of fiction and folklore. They didn't claim to be real.
I will find your earth box and drive that stake through your heart.
The earliest documented mention of a purportedly Victorian vampire killing kit dates back to only 1986, when a later disgraced auction house called House of Swords in Militaria listed a most unusual but necessary item of insurance against vampire attacks for $850. The earliest in-depth discussion of such kits, on the other hand, took place 3 years later, in 1989, in a gun magazine of all things. And not just any old gun magazine, the gun magazine. The gun magazine so well known, Thomas Harris name drops it in The Silence of the Lambs. I mean, it makes sense that this kit would be covered in guns and ammo, considering that its centerpiece is this sick crucifixion gun that can shoot silver bullets. Phil Spangenberger, the author of the article, employs a generally jokey tone, writing, "People who make a habit of staying up into the wee hours of the morning are well aware of the increasing vampire problem and have learned to take precautions against these nasty buggers. Why else do you think that nightclubbers love to gather at some brightly lit coffee shop for breakfast after spending the better part of the night in the local bar?" He clearly isn't taking any of this too seriously, even posing for a little vampire hunter photo op. And yet, when it comes to the age of the kid, the article asserts that, upon close examination, it appears to be genuinely old. Spangenberger also suggests that it could have been produced as a toy for the man who had everything of the mid-19th century. And even though he makes note of the fact that other kits have been reported with some skepticism, he doesn't name any specific instances. The kit itself was introduced to the author by Val Forget of Navy Arms Company, who found this apparently very old set at a gun show and decided that this was truly an unusual firearm find, and one that might someday prove useful as well. If you go to Wikipedia and look up Val Forget, you'll find that he is the father of the modern replica firearms business. I'll tell you more. Even Guns and Ammo's postmortem profile of Forget notes that he pioneered the replica gun business as we know it today. Which could mean nothing, but let's take a peek inside. The kit, as per the label, contains the items considered necessary for the protection of persons who travel into certain little-known countries of Eastern Europe, where the populace are plagued with a particular manifestation of evil known as vampires. Other than the fuck-ass crucifix gun and the accompanying silvered powder flask and ramrod, there's also a little bottle of what is identified as Professor Blomberg's new serum. In fact, Professor Blomberg seems to be the guy to look to for vampire stuff, for the rest of the text suggests that the purchasers study Professor Ernst Blomberg's book, evidently describing vampires, their care and feeding, habitat, and how to recognize one. Put a pin in that man, by the way. Not just a pin, like, impale that man, Tepesh style. The same year, 1989, a kit was donated to the Mercer Museum in Philadelphia. That kit is also the first and only one to be thoroughly tested. When Winterthur's Scientific Research and Analysis Laboratory checked out every component of it in 2004, the results were somewhat unexpected. While the materials used were found to be generally consistent with the 19th century, and the powder horn even had gunpowder in it, there was also modern adhesive and glass used. But besides all of that science shit that I barely understand, there was one big revelation. The paper used for the label was processed using optical brightening agents, which didn't exist before 1945. But that, again, doesn't really prove anything in a vacuum of information that usually accompanies such kits. Sure, some stuff doesn't add up, but other stuff does. It could be argued that this could be a legit antique that someone whipped into shape by using modern means. I mean, I'm not gonna be the one to argue that because I think it's fucking stupid. But it could be argued. The fact that the label on the Mercer kit was made in the mid-20th century at the earliest definitely proves jack shit in terms of vampire killing kits in general. But the contents of the label are a much more interesting story. Click here to see hot vampire hunting professors in your area. Remember Professor Blomberg from the Guns and Ammo kit? Because this diva might be the answer to all the questions surrounding the history and authenticity of all vampire killing kits. Here's the thing. All vampire killing kits can generally be divided into two categories: Blomberg and non-Blomberg. In fact, Professor Blomberg pops up so often that the Blomberg kits sold at various auctions outnumber the non-Blomberg ones. Even both the kits I've discussed up to this point are Blombergs. Like, I cannot overemphasize how important this guy is to this whole thing. There's no other person with this much vampire hunting cred. His kits have sold for thousands and are kept in museums all over the world. He's like the world's nichest 19th century micro-celebrity. A Blomberg kit can be identified by, and you'll never guess, a label crediting Professor Ernst Blomberg. Those also typically contain some mysterious substance, now evaporated, which claims to be Professor Blomberg's new serum. She professor on my Blomberg to a new serum, am I right? The contents of the kits themselves are honestly as random as they come. Exhibit A. This kit that first appeared on eBay and was later resold at an auction for over 10 grand has a crossbow. This kit, also a Blomberg, has a crucifix-shaped pistol. And this boring one for basic Blomberg heads just has a normal gun. Exhibit B. For extra holiness when impaling bloodsuckers, this Blomberg kit contains a prayer book. This one goes for some holy water instead, and the Mercer kit only contains the ivory crucifix I mentioned earlier. Spookyland, which chronicles and systemizes a lot of vampire killing kit mania and is now a website antique in its own right, suggests that these discrepancies don't necessarily mean that Blomberg is fake. As the author theorizes, there might have been a Professor Blomberg who originally made a few kits, and then people started copying the Blomberg label and legend as a way to add credibility to their fakes. Either way, Blomberg is at the center of all this. All roads don't lead to Rome. because at least a number of them leads to Blomberg. Most Blomberg kids also credit a gun maker called Nicholas Plumger, so in theory, if we can track down a certain 19th century Blomberg and a certain 19th century Plumger with like a documented interest in vampires, we can prove that vampire killing kits existed in the 19th century. Sounds easy enough. Or maybe we can prove that the fakers are real, like, 19th century nerds. But then, honestly, it's fair game.
Back to the computer. Oh my gosh, I'm such a nerd. Let's see if I got any new comments. Aw, man.
And this is where we come to what the video is really about. Ernst Blomberg. I've been obsessed with Ernst Blomberg for the past few months, to the point of no return. I've never stalked someone to this degree before. I live and I breathe Ernst Blomberg. I wake up thinking about him and I go to sleep with the words Ernst Blomberg swishing around in my head. I had a nightmare about Ernst Blomberg last night. Okay, the last one was a lie, but I might as well have. But before I chew my brains up and vomit them into your proverbial mouth like a caring mama bird, let me set the stage. Enter Survival Arts. This website, which is crucial to multiple vampire killing kit research incidents, is the obscure personal blog of one Russell Whitaker, a gun-loving, don't-tread-on-me, latex gloves-buying, and welfare-hating extraordinaire. It was originally created sometime around November 2002, and not even a year later, on May 3rd, 2003, Whitaker posted about a vampire killing kit he stumbled upon when browsing auctions at gunbroker.com. Likely place for a libertarian to be. At first, the post only received one comment from Kurt Howland, who had a very 2000s website of his own. The next to pipe in was Vlad, who commented almost half a year later. Vampire Kit is a scam. You know, pretty straightforward, to the point, love that. But then, after over a year since the original post went live, someone by the name of Steve dropped the first out of 3 major bombs.
As German translators listed at our local Roseburg, Oregon library, my wife and I were contacted several years ago by a gunsmith who specialized in black powder arms to translate a couple of articles. The articles turned out to be a list of instructions as to how to use Professor Ernst Blomberg's vampire killing kit, a thank you note to a Belgian gunsmith, and a recipe for his new potion. There were instructions on how to utilize the potion, which consisted of holy water, garlic extract, honey, and salt, each having scientific reasons for their being in the potion. The instructions were very detailed. They told of how to safely load the gun using the powder measure, how to apply the wadding, and the silver bullet. His plan was to sell the kits to the people in Hollywood and other places who buy anything just to have it.
So, if this comment is true, there's an Blomberg kit out there somewhere with documentation to back it up, and a bunch of fakers created on the basis of it. There's certainly a lot of detail in the post that doesn't seem to come from any public vampire hunting kit knowledge. The shooting at a downward angle, the brass thread at the base of the crucifix. But now, let's up the ante. On January 10th, 2005, a Michael de Winter commented,
"Hi there. You should know that all the quotes on your site are a load of codswallop. The reason is this. The whole vampire killing kit myth is purely the result of my very fertile imagination, and I produced the original in 1972. Nicholas Plomger, the gunsmith in Liege, and Professor Ernst Blomberg are not and have never been real people. I still have an original copy of the label from the box and am astounded to learn how my joke has caused so much interest and fakery."
After rightfully being called out on the vagueness of his confession, de Winter elaborated.
"I sold antique pistols, and a poor quality Belgian box-lock percussion pistol came into my possession. I decided to produce something which should not, to my knowledge, previously existed. A vampire killing kit. I put together a number of items, hand-set a trade label, priced the item at £1,000, and was amazed at the interest it produced. I didn't expect to sell it, merely to use it as a marketing tool. It sold."
And that's when all hell broke loose. Some believed de Winter, some did not. Among the latter group was C.M. van Helmont, who begged to differ. This is the last dramatic reading of this chapter, so enjoy it, savor it.
To finalize a study that was started between 4 European universities, I visited 23 museums where such items were kept. None were fakes. I have also visited the Militaria in Brussels, Belgium. They keep one of these kits. Professor Siegfried Bracke from the Kölner Waffenverein also confirmed that the gun was indeed from a rather well-known gunsmith from Liège named Nicolas Plondeur. No fiction here either. The religious markings I examined were neither constructed nor added. All was what it seemed to be. In the library of the Universität zu Lübeck, there are several courses from one Professor Ernst Freiherr von Blomberg. The man seems to have had an obsession with shapeshifters and other creatures alike, for he wrote a rather unreadable book on it. It seems that some people would like to get credit and a lot of attention for something they didn't achieve. And that's the truth.
So, if Michael de Winter invented Blomberg and Plomger, and Blomberg and Plomger are also very real, then who's flying the plane? Who's telling the truth? Why is community-defining drama unfolding on a random guy's personal website? Who the fuck is Michael de Winter? Who the fuck is C.M. Van Helmont? Who the fuck is Steve? Again, everything goes back to Blomberg and Plomger.
I bet. Come on. Very specific detail to pluck out of thin air!
I just finished recording this entire thing and then I realized that my mic wasn't plugged in properly. So let's do this again. If you were to, say, look up Ernst Blomberg on the Internet Archive, you would find that there was an Ernst Blomberg in the 19th century who was the president of the Swedish Metal Workers Union. So based, hot even, but he kind of had nothing to do with like vampires and professorship and all of that stuff. Also, I'm pretty sure that as a Swede, his last name would be pronounced something like Blomberg. Swedish people, don't crucify me if that's wrong, because my skills at Nordic languages just kind of end at being able to very politely refuse a piece of food in Danish. Most often, the Blomberg-shaped hole in the story is patched up with one Professor Ernst Freiherr von Blomberg, and the whole Freiherr part sometimes gets confusing for people. Like, for example, Freiherr von Blomberg might be the actual surname of our Blomberg, so these do not represent a genealogical direct hit. Let me tell you something. Let me whip out my German for a second, because believe it or not, I actually speak German beyond just the Sie transvestigaten meinen Ikea hot dog. So the German Blomberg family is of actual nobility. They even have a title of Baron, which in German would be Freiherr. So that would make our boy Ernst a Freiherr von Blomberg, a Baron of Blombergs. That's not a surname, that's a title plus a surname. So it doesn't really matter whether this fella Ernst is a Freiherr von Blomberg or just a Blomberg, because that's the same exact thing. So Ernst, Freiherr or not, Blomberg does seem to have been a real person, question mark. Hey, what's up? Come here. Hi, baby. Hi. I mean, he's mentioned on his family's Wikipedia page. There's like a picture of a book he wrote. There is even a photograph of his very questionable Victorian mug. And Steve's account of the very detailed text that he was tasked with translating would only confirm this, right? The dedicated skeptics at Spookyland concluded that Ernst von Blomberg was a real professor with a real interest in vampires. I mean, he's even got a profile on Ancestry.com, for fuck's sake. So to start this whole thing off, let me give you an overview of Blomberg's biography, as it usually goes on Wikipedia, other online encyclopedias, retold by C.M. Van Helmont, by Spookyland, all of that stuff. Details may vary, of course, but that would be, you know, on par for researching a kind of obscure 19th century guy. There's bound to be speculation when we're talking about the 19th century. But this is generally how the story of Ernst von Blomberg goes. Ernst Freiherr von Blomberg was the son of Wilhelm Freiherr von Blomberg. He was born in Hamburg in 1821. He studied evangelical theology at school and biology at university, and in 1856 he was appointed lector, the academic title, not the cannibal, at Fachhochschule Lübeck. He also held the chair of the Department of Zoology at the same university, and in 1869 he published Die Verwandlung im Principus Tiere, Menschen und ihr gottlosen Verein, which covered topics such as clinical lycanthropy and clinical vampirism. He died in 1903 in Lübeck, and in 1914 Springer Berlin posthumously published his Ein seltener Fall von Hydrocephalus in the Zeitschrift für die gesamte Neurologie und Psychiatrie. That's a real mouthful. So that was his last study that scientifically proved that a physical deformation was a possible case of lycanthropy and vampirism. And that whole thing, I mean, it sounds convincing enough, as long as you don't double check anything. On an unrelated note, you will never guess what I did. I double checked everything. Now lock the fuck in. Random 19th century men are quite hard to research. You know, they didn't exactly think about preserving some copies for the 21st century nerds. But you gotta remember that Ernst is not just some basic chopped liver. He's a Freiherr. And nobility loves posterity, even if they don't exactly pick out a font that would be easy to digitize like fucking ever. Here is Ernst's supposed father, listed in the Kösener court records for 1807, and here is him being named as one of the children that survived his mother's passing in 1918. That's kind of generally how I'd go about verifying somebody's existence, at least for what should have been a simple video like this. Find a few independent contemporary sources, compare them, bang, Bob's your uncle. Well, Ernst has a profile on Ancestry and Geneanet. And Vas is yelling, I'm not gonna be cutting that out. His mother is an abstract concept with no name.
True, Eve.
His birth, christening, death are not documented anywhere. You know, he was born, he killed some vampires, and then he kicked the bucket, leaving absolutely no trace for future researchers. For comparison, this is what the events and sources look like for his supposed father, Wilhelm Karl... Wilhelm Karl...
Okay. It's so German.
Such a German name. Wilhelm Karl Georg Ludwig von Blomberg. That's one long-ass name, isn't it? Well, remember, this is 19th century German nobility we're talking about. They all have about 4 or 5 first names. So why is Ernst just Ernst? Like, did his family really not like him or something? No sources that claim that he is real ever share a full name.
You know, he could be Ernst because he's honest. He didn't need any other name.
I have now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being honest.
When I was looking to verify his dad, I was like, okay, Wilhelm Karl, that's gonna be enough. There's like fucking 7 of those bitches, all in the 19th century. No contemporary records I could find name a single Ernst as Wilhelm's son, or mention that Wilhelm had a son, period. The family line seemingly just stops at Ernst. I even reached out to a far descendant of this Blomberg line that has been working on completing their family tree, and they couldn't give me any new or concrete information. The German Wikipedia page for the Blomberg family, by the way, mentions no Ernst, despite being way more in-depth and relevant to those interested in German nobility than, you know, the English language version. So, you know, maybe no documents survived, which would, and I could not emphasize this enough, be unheard of for a noble family that documented everything else. But Ernst had a long tenure at the Fachhochschule Lübeck, right? I said, setting up another reveal. The thing about Fachhochschule Lübeck is that it was founded as a vacation school that taught architectural drawing. I cannot say the word drawing correctly, but you know. In the mid-19th century, some math and natural sciences were added to the curriculum, but they were still taught in the evening and on Sundays only. There was no fucking department of zoology there. They couldn't have cared less about zoology. It wasn't even a proper Lübeck institution until 1901. It was a private trade school. It's right there on their website. Do people really not know how to fucking read? And the University of Lübeck, the only other university at Lübeck, wasn't founded until 1964. Here's a picture from the literal day the university was founded. Again, right there on the website. So how, on God's green earth, would Professor Ernst, no middle names, Freiherr von Blomberg release this banger in 1869? And why, if Lübeck was so zoology forward, would it be printed in Hamburg? Did they not have a printing press at the fake zoology department of the Fachhochschule? And let's look at the very title page and contents of this thing. First, we know that 19th century science was often quite wacky, but why would a professor of zoology write a book on psychology? What do you do, Professor Ernst Blomberg, successfully? quickly. And it almost looks like the pages don't really match up, as if they come from different documents? Because of course they do. The purported contents of Blomberg's book are just this book, Über die Werwölfe und Tierverwandlungen im Mittelalter, by a real 19th century psychiatrist and physician Rudolf Leubuscher. The fuckers just sloppily retyped the title page and changed a few words. And the paper that was published posthumously? Yeah, it's by a whole different Blomberg. It took a couple hours to find him, but here he is. His name is Karl Gotthard Eberhard Freiherr von Blomberg. Fuck-ass name. And he was born in 1860 and died in 1930. He was a physician at the provincial mental hospital in Koschen. I'm sorry to Polish people if I butchered that name, I really didn't mean to. He's mentioned in multiple editions of the Gotha noble family genealogical logs, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, as well as a number of papers from the early 20th century. And also in this 1895 edition of the Allgemeine Zeitschrift für Psychiatrie und psychisch-gerichtliche Medizin. This is really putting my fucking German to the test.
Yeah, it's every word that you would never use.
The article itself contains no mentions of vampirism or lycanthropy and describes events from 1913, when our boy Ernst would have been dead and buried for about 10 years. I'll tell you more. They're not even from the same line of the Blomberg family. Ernst, the fake Blomberg, would be from the Lippe line, and this guy is from the Courland line. I pronounce it with a German accent because I don't know how to pronounce it in English. Courland?
Courland?
Here's a map with some...
It's upside down.
Is it?
The map is upside down.
Here's a map with some sloppy drawings by yours truly that shows where Courland and Lippe were and where Lübeck and Kosten is. If Ernst was real, he'd have to exist and work simultaneously in both of these green circles, oscillating between teaching at Lübeck and working in Kosten, or again, modern day Kosten, sorry to Polish people. Also, I tracked down Steven, the German translator, who kindly informed me that the text he mentioned in his comment, the one that contained the recipe for Blomberg's new serum and some useful info on how to best shoot the crucifix gun, was fictional and came from a contemporary magazine. Who would have thought? And now, for my pièce de résistance, I'm gonna point something out. C.M. van Helmont posted their comment on May 20th, 2008. And unsurprisingly, it is the earliest mention of the Ernst story as I recounted it earlier. Before that, no details existed. Ernst was just a name on the label. A month after the comment, on June 23rd, 2008, a now deleted Wikipedia account created the English language page for the Blomberg family, describing, and here is the gag, only Wilhelm and Ernst. The user's activity on Wikipedia, by the way, is limited to Ernst von Blomberg and Ernst von Blomberg only. This isn't a wiki editor or a dedicated nerd. This is somebody who was just trying to fabricate the existence of our dearly beloved boy Ernst. On September 25, 2008, this picture was uploaded by none other than user C.M. van Helmont, who has not contributed to Wikipedia a single time before or since. As you can assume, I also couldn't track down a real person by that name. Shocker, I know. But here is where it gets interesting. So if you've been paying attention, you will remember that Blomberg did not work alone. He repeatedly thanked a certain Nicholas Plomger, a gunmaker from Liège, and that guy was actually real. He's mentioned by this Belgian gun enthusiast encyclopedia, which has nothing to do with vampires. It says that he was registered with the Liège Proof House from 1836 to 1863. You are not getting on my table. And he seems to have been quite renowned. Like in 1851, he even took his guns to the Great Exhibition in London. Here's him being mentioned in the catalog, and here's him being mentioned as having been awarded the Class 8 medal, whatever that means, for best guns and rifles and all of that type of stuff. So after trying and failing to verify the claims that there are multiple Plomger guns kept at the Arms Museum in Liège, I gave up and I just emailed the Arms Department curator, who kindly informed me that there is, in fact, one Vivario Plomger rifle kept in storage. And I also found a pair of Belgian percussion pistols, again, whatever the fuck that means, that are stamped Vivario Plomger on sale at an antique store in the Netherlands. So by all accounts, this story actually checks out. Now we have a guy who is fully fucking fake, and we have a guy who is fully real. How did that happen? I'll tell you how. Michael de Winter, the man who kept insisting that he actually came up with the whole vampire killing kit thing, might actually have been telling the truth. But we gotta meet someone first.
Would this only kill people during the olden days, or could it kill modern people too?
I'm afraid it definitely could kill modern people.
This is Jonathan Ferguson, firearm historian and keeper of firearms and artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum. Ferguson has also authored much of the research this video is based on, and you would know that if you bothered to read the citations on screen or in the description. But it's okay, you know, whatever you're cooking looks great, and if you're not cooking, then I don't know, congrats on your spreadsheet, your craft project, your literacy. Other than a real full-time job, Ferguson also has a somewhat niche internet blog. I know, many such cases. And over many years and many posts, he has concluded that these kits aren't fake, but they aren't real either.
This is still a contemporary museum object. You can see them as fakes if you like, but as far as we know, there's nothing that they're a fake of. They're an original thing in their own right.
Other than the 1985 Fright Night, Ferguson has hunted down many other media firsts which point to the kits being a somewhat recent invention. For example, he points out that shooting vampires with a gun, even if not unprecedented, only entered the mainstream English-speaking canon post-popularization of Dracula, and that would be the 20th century. And silver bullets are first mentioned in 1928 in The Vampire, His Kith and Kin. Not even to mention that the whole shtick only got popularized by Hammer-era films in the 70s. The guns and ammo kit I discussed at the beginning of the video contained bullets with a cross etched into them. For some of the, you know, extra Christian hell yeah, I guess. Timothy 2:5. For there is one God and one mediator between God and vampires. This sick fucking gun. The cross etched into the bullets is not only low-key nonsensical, but also super niche. As per Ferguson, I have found two printed references to this ultra-obscure practice, a 1965 issue of Penthouse magazine and issue 31 of the graphic novel Tomb of Dracula. Now, if we combine that with the previously discussed lab results and the fake Professor Blomberg, it becomes very clear that the chances of these kids being real equal roughly the chances of me not having a fun alcohol-free beverage during a video. But again, when I'm saying that they aren't real, you need to imagine there's an asterisk at the end of the sentence. They are not real in the obvious sense that vampires, and I hate to break this to you, don't actually exist. I mean, history has seen some vampire hunting crazes like the New England vampire panic, but no historical sources document the use or even existence of vampire killing kits. Another suggestion that pops up a lot in regards to these things is that they were sold as souvenirs or curiosity items to gullible Western travelers visiting Eastern Europe in the 19th century. And again, are there any documents to back it up? Even like one single flimsy diary entry? Just like one little advertisement in a newspaper? Nothing. Nichts. Nada. Niczego. And if a vampire is killed with a wooden stake that comes from a kit and nobody's around to witness it, does the bloodsucker even make a sound? The kits often are assembled of or contain genuine antiques, like the Mercer kit's ivory cross is in fact old as shit. Same goes for the gun and the box. But the antiques in question are then assembled and recontextualized as vampire killing kits. So the kits are both fake in that they are not genuine 19th century items, but also real in that they contain 19th century items and are original things in their own right. They're not replicating anything. This conclusion regarding the provenance of vampire killing kits is something Ferguson arrived at sometime around 2010-2012. Now let's compare that to the version of the story that Michael de Winter shared in 2005, before the theory was as widely spread as it is now.
My story starts in or around 1970, when I was employed in the printing industry. My hobby was buying, selling and refurbishing antique guns. I sold mainly at the famous Portobello Market in London. One of my regulars wanted a fine flintlock pistol and asked me to take in part exchange a Belgian percussion pocket pistol. I grudgingly agreed and allowed him £15 off the price of the flintlock. So here it is, a poor quality pocket pistol in mediocre condition. What to do with it? That was my question. Having an extremely fertile imagination and being an avid reader, I was inspired. It occurred to me that I could produce something unique that would be a great advertising gimmick and would attract people to my stall. I had recently been reading a 19th century book on the manufacturing of various types of guns, specifically percussion, and the language of the book helped me in my setting up of the label for the kit. I hand set the label myself, and the copy I used was printed on a hand-operated press using the flyleaf of a book printed in 1850 regarding Professor Ernst Blomberg and the gunmaker of Liège, Nicholas Plongeon. Both these gentlemen were figments of my imagination, and I was amazed to find mention on a website of Nicholas Plongeon's early career in Paris. To encourage interest, I priced the kit at £1,000, believing that it would cause some interest, but certainly put anyone off buying it. So that's how it all started. I seem to have spawned a lovely silly myth, and I wonder how many of Professor Blomberg's vampire killing kits are around. It is interesting to note that the majority of kits produced use both of my invented persons. Additionally, they seem to like my phraseology. For example, use of words such as populace and manifestations of evil.
I mean, doesn't this just sound like very probable? De Winter's email address is now defunct, so I couldn't reach him, but it's not for lack of trying. So you know whom I did reach successfully? Ferguson. You know, I get one alcohol-free gin and tonic in me on a Friday night and I just start emailing people. That's the type of thing you do when your brain is finally done cooking. So Ferguson, who reached out to De Winter himself, shared with me that De Winter was not only willing to reaffirm his story to a museum curator, but also sent him a photocopy of the allegedly original label. Again, this all sounds very probable. But, you know, what about Plomger? Well, it would make sense that an antiques dealer would be familiar with Plomger or even working with Plomger guns for kids and pull that name out consciously or unconsciously when trying to invent a buddy for Blomberg. Or honestly, it could just be a lucky coincidence, considering Plomger's last name lacks a whole word and his first name is spelled incorrectly. This is less of a Plomger and more of a Plomger you try to draw from memory while a little crossed. And while De Winter's story does sound quite realistic, I also cannot guarantee shit. I'm not the vampire killing kid police. It should be noted that at least one more person has claimed to be the originator of this whole thing. Or I should say, to know the originator of this whole thing. Meet the Atlantic City-based writer Christopher Pinto. He just happened to be friends with the mysterious and reclusive gothic artist Cristobal, who actually started producing vampire killing kits way back in the 50s. Like, I swear guys, I have a girlfriend and she makes vampire killing kits, but she just lives in another city. And even though his website plays this fun little tune when you open the vampire killing kit page, this does seem like a bunch of bullshit, if I'm being honest. There's not a single mention of Cristobal pre-2009, or one that doesn't lead back to Pinto, save for a suspiciously empty MySpace page. Like, this guy is so antisocial that he only takes orders through Pinto, but also somehow has a personal social media account and has had a career building these kits for stage, screen, and private collectors. And let me get this straight. Cristobal started the vampire killing kit craze in the 90s, but he also invented them. But he was also inspired to start creating them when he saw vampire killing kit at Ripley's Believe It or Not in St. Augustine, Florida. Right. Sure. It's kind of camp how flimsy of a fake person Cristobal is. Christopher Pinto, I'm not hating on your grind, but you really could not reheat the Ernst Blomberg nachos even with the power of 1,000 suns. If you're willing to invent a person who's definitely not you but in a different hat, you gotta at least put some effort in. Which, speaking of Blomberg, why would C.M. van Helmont go through the trouble of fabricating a whole biography for this fake person?
And that's the truth.
Again, me when I lie.
Me when I lie.
And that's the truth. So here's what I believe actually happened. The mid to late 2000s is when vampire killing kits first start generating some buzz on the internet. Even though a few have popped up at auctions and in private collections before, it was 2004 when a Blomberg kit was sold by Sotheby's for $26,400. That is a shit ton of money. Like almost 50K when adjusted for inflation, shit ton of money. Seeing this buzz, a number of fakers start producing their own kits in an attempt to get some cash. Blomberg is the obvious choice because there's already some credibility behind his name, seeing as the oldest and most expensive kits are Blombergs. At the same time, the mid to late 2000s is when the kits first start getting any significant pushback, culminating in the Treasures on Trial testing, the Mercer kit, and the Winter's Confession, of course. So, to keep the money train going, our friend C.M. van Helmont and possibly other fakers try to tie a fake Blomberg into the real Blomberg family, which is great because it's not well known outside of Germany, and there's also a shit ton of different Blombergs of all kinds. There's a Blomberg for everybody. The fakers pick out a father for Ernst, produce a picture of some old guy, lazily fabricate a book, and get to work putting the info out on the internet. It just needed to be believable enough, especially in the earlier years of your average everyman being able to use the internet for research on any old topic. And it was! Considering that the fake Blomberg story not only stayed up on Wikipedia with no sources to this day, but also spread to other websites by unsuspecting people who don't care about vampire killing kits. I personally believe that De Winter, or somebody like him, came up with the original Blomberg kit. The old man had nothing to gain from admitting to this fakery. He didn't face reveal, he gave no interviews, he didn't start producing De Winter kits, and discrediting the Blomberg legend would only tank the prices of any possible stock he had left. He is also, very likely, not the only person to have come up with the idea of assembling such kits. That being said, such kits continue to circulate even after being continuously discredited, because they are a curiosity in their own right. Etsy and similar websites are full of custom vampire killing kits, people are producing their own as gifts and conversation starters. Corey Amsler of the Mercer Museum claims that their vampire killing kit has been a major attendance booster for decades. And in 2009, Edward Meyer, the VP of Exhibits and Archives for Ripley's Believe It or Not at the time, aptly noted, "If I've got a vampire killing kit made in 1962 or in 2002, it still allows me to talk about vampires. So maybe it's not really about authenticity. Maybe it never was. I mean, vampires aren't real, but they have had us and our stories in a chokehold for centuries. Maybe the Ernst Blomberg was the friends we made along the way." Do you think Ernst Blomberg and Nicolas Plomdeur ever explore each other's bodies?
I mean,